Good morning, North County. I'm Carl Morgan. I'm the Chief Professional Officer for the North County Economic Development Corporation. That is our 501c3. I also serve as the Chief Executive Officer for our 501c6 San Diego North Economic Development Council. It is my honor to welcome you to our third annual North County Economic Summit.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say, does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
It's so wonderful, truly, to see all of our community partners out in the room. Without you and your numerous support and both financial and also just giving of your time and talent really means a lot to our organization throughout the year. We have a tremendous number of elected officials, representatives, and special guests in the room today. All of their names are listed on the slide behind me. And would you please stand so that we may thank you for your leadership and your support. I'd like to now ask each of our North County Economic Development Corp, our 501c3 trustee board to stand, along with our San Diego North Economic Development Council board. Please stand so we can acknowledge you. Thank you all for your support and your steward leadership. You do a phenomenal job for our organizations. I want to thank Jessica Bradford, catering manager. She's in the back center of the room, and her staff. And a big shout out also to the AV folks that helped us with a few little issues this morning. Now I'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, Wells Fargo. Without Brian Lee, President, North San Diego County, and his team's support, this economic summit and the two before that would not have been possible. I'd also like to recognize BW Research and the San Diego County Board of Supervisors, Dave Roberts, District 3, for sponsoring the North County Prospects 2016 report. I'd also like to acknowledge and thank Tri-City Medical Center for sponsoring our wonderful breakfast. To David Bennett, the Tri-City Medical Center, their board, and their staff, you are a great team and a great partner. Thank you. And then we also want to acknowledge our innovation partner, Viasat. They've been a tremendous partner of ours. They serve on the San Diego North EDC Board of Directors. And our media sponsors, a big thanks to Tri-City Medical Center, UT San Diego, Federal Heath Sign Company, and San Diego Business Journal for their wonderful support in helping us promote this event. And Tri-City Medical Center actually provided, through a grant that they give to KOCT, the ability for us to videotape today's presentation so it's not lost and so it can be used to market the assets and attributes of North County. It'll be up on our website, and you can share it with people who are looking to invest and move to North County. And I'd like to recognize our two premier sponsors, the Leeuwenhoek Municipal Water District and North County Transit District, who have played a large part in today's event being such a huge success. It is my sincere pleasure to introduce Supervisor Dave Roberts, District 3 Supervisor. Dave and I have actually been on the job about the same amount of time. I joined the EDC about 3 years ago, and I understand that he's been supervisor now for about 3 years. I'll keep my remarks short, but what I want to say is he is one of the most energetic, passionate servant leaders that I have ever met. He understands and supports economic development not only with his actions, but with his investment in San Diego County. Please join me in a warm welcome to County Board of Supervisor, 3rd District, Dave Roberts.
I think it's always great when you see 400 people up at 7 a.m. in the morning for a wonderful breakfast here in North County. So it's great to see so many friendly faces here in the room today. You know, San Diego County now has over 3.2 million residents. We're the 5th most populated county now in the United States. Our county government has slightly over 17,000 employees, and we have an annual budget of $5.4 billion. It's a phenomenal county, but as I'm always telling people with one of my colleagues on the board, North County San Diego is truly phenomenal. And I just feel so honored to be one of the representatives that get to represent North County on our board of supervisors. It's hard to believe it's my 4th year now there. Carl mentioned this is the 3rd annual summit that we're having today. I've been to all 3 now of the summits, and I'm so pleased that the County of San Diego is helping out in a small way on this summit. You know, people ask me, what keeps you up at night as a county supervisor? What are you thinking about? What are you concerned about? And of course, I'm always telling them, you know, one of the biggest concerns I have had is, you know, having a sustainable source of water here in North County. And without water, we can't do anything else. And thank goodness our San Diego County Water Authority has made investments over the last 2 decades to work on that challenge. But we have other challenges too. Affordable housing is a big need that we have here in San Diego County. Transportation infrastructure. I saw the executive director of North County Transit District who is here with us, and you'll see in a while. I used to be on that board and be the chair of that board, but between the Sprinter, the Coaster, and the buses that they provide, a phenomenal resource here for our community in North County. I also think of our diverse population that we have here in North County. You know, it gets more diverse each and every day, and it brings with it a lot of challenges, a lot of growing pains, but a lot of possibilities. You know, we have good schools here, good health systems, stable local governments that like to work together. Our cities and the county, the state, the federal, we all try as a team here to work together. And the other day, Jerry Sanders, I ran into him twice downtown. He says, I hope you're not going to mention, and he used a choice word, but he mentioned the county's credit rating. And I said, Jerry, if we didn't have that AAA bond rating by all 3 credit rating agencies, and just to point out, Jerry, the county didn't get it till I got to the board in 2013, and we've had it every year, 2013, 14, 15, and we just got it recertified for 2016. If we didn't have that credit rating by all 3 credit rating agencies, and we're one of only a handful in the United States that can say this as a county, if we didn't have that, we would not have the quality of life we have here. We have low to no borrowing at the County of San Diego, and this helps our business climate. And that's really what we're here today to learn more about, is the economic development, the business climate, and what we're working on. You know, the North County Economic Development Corporation has truly been a partner working with me. We have many other chambers represented here today. I'm so pleased. I have the Encinitas Chamber Executive Director. I have the North San Diego Business County Business Chamber Executive Director sitting at my table over here. But all of us partner together working with the North County EDC to truly make this a better business climate for all. Together, we're solving problems to we're providing solutions to real problems. And that's what I think the EDC is trying to do. I know we've got mayors from the 78 corridor here who are working closely together on the Innovate 78 project, which touches Escondido in my district, and then Bill Horn has the other 3 78 corridor cities. But together, we can make this county even better. So thank you all for being here today. Thank you for the work you do each and every day to make San Diego County an even greater place for all of us to live, to work, and to recreate. And now it's my distinct pleasure to introduce somebody that's been a friend of mine for a number of years, and that's Julie Nygaard. And Julie has served on the Tri-City Medical Board, and Julie and I served together at North County Transit. And she also just got appointed last fall as the Finance Committee Chair for the Association of California Health Districts. Julie, you are a true leader here in North County, and it's such a pleasure for me to introduce you now to the stage. Welcome, Julie Nygaard.
Good morning, everyone. It's nice to see all of you here so early. Tri-City Medical Center is proud to support the San Diego North Economic Development Council as a sponsor for this event. There are many exciting changes happening at Tri-City, including finalizing our affiliation between Tri-City and the UC healthcare system. And we're still starting our campus, and we are now starting our campus redevelopment plan. The Design and Build Committee are meeting weekly. If you want further details about what's going on with our building plans, you're welcome to visit us at Tri-City Hospital lobby. We have renderings, or you can contact David Bennett if you'd like to find out more. Tri-City Hospital will soon be starting their community breakfasts again, and anybody who would like to attend is welcome to call the hospital and ask for an invitation.
I'm Mark KALPAGIAN. I work as the president of the Board of Trustees for the North County Economic Development Corporation. It's my honor and privilege to work and serve all of you. Just want to call out SDG&E and Juanita Hayes for sponsoring and underwriting this for today's event. So thank you, SDG&E. As you may or may not know, the North County Economic Development Corporation is the 501c3 side of what you're more familiar with as the San Diego North Economic Development Council. So that's the C6 side, we're the C3 side of the organization. And for the next couple years, our key initiatives will be the following: growing businesses in North County, fostering talent between education and business, enhancing neighborhoods, like the discussion we're going to have later today, marketing North County's resources. I don't know, how many of you have read the North County Business Journal that's come out? If you haven't, you need to. This is a phenomenal publication that is showcasing and spotlighting the work that you're doing here in North County. It's spotlighting it here locally, and it's taking that out nationally. And then we're also providing useful, relevant data, such as this morning's Economic Summit, to hopefully impact your planning and your resources and your strategy for the coming year. Through these initiatives, we hope to positively impact and collaborate again with all of you to improve North County. And I'd like to extend a special thank you at this time to Mark VITNER, Managing Director and Senior Economist at Wells Fargo, and Josh Williams, President and Co-founder of BW Research, who have developed this morning's keynote presentations. And now, Brian, it is my pleasure to welcome Brian Lee, North County President of Wells Fargo, our presenting sponsor, to the stage.
On behalf of the 3,200 Wells Fargo team members that live and work in San Diego County, We are very proud to support the North County Economic Development Corporation and to be the presenting sponsor of the 3rd Annual Economic Summit. At Wells Fargo, we remain committed to supporting our local economy and supporting our economy's growth. We believe that we can only be as successful in the communities in which we do business if they're successful. North County continues to grow and establish a robust business community. This morning's Economic Summit provides a platform to highlight the growth of North County business and demonstrates the opportunity to further economic development throughout the region. As a financial institution, we strive to satisfy our customers' financial needs and help them to succeed financially. We are committed to supporting our local businesses as they develop and continue to grow. To better provide insight and discuss the 2016 economic outlook, I would like to welcome Mark VITNER, Managing Director and Senior Economist at Wells Fargo. Mark is responsible for tracking U.S. and California economic trends. Based in Charlotte, North Carolina, Mark writes for Wells Fargo's monthly Economic Outlook Report, the weekly Economic and Financial Commentary, and provides regular updates on housing markets, commercial real estate, regional economies, and inflation. His commentary has been featured in the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, Bloomberg, and many other publications. Mark first joined Wachovia in 1993. Before that, he spent 9 years as an economist for Barnett Banks in Jacksonville, Florida. Originally from Atlanta, Mark earned his BBA in economics from the University of Georgia, go Bulldogs, an MBA from the University of North Florida, and has completed further graduate work in economics at the University of Florida. He's also completed the National Association of Business Economics, NABE, Advanced Training in Economics program at Carnegie Mellon University. Please welcome Mark VITNER.
In terms of the economic outlook, this has been an eventful year. I mean, we're here at the start of March, and it's only, I think we can still count the number of up days the stock market's had on our fingers. You know, it's been a rough start to the year, and almost since day one we've been getting questions. Are we going to have a recession? Are we going to have a recession? You know, how bad is this? What's going on? I think the whole economy is, the whole country is suffering a little bit from a hangover from the financial crisis, and worried that that's going to come back upon us. We don't see anything that's sinister in all of this. I think that the pullback in the stock market, they're never comfortable. You can never really pin it on any one thing. But I think more than anything else, the pullback that we saw since the start of the year has to do with the uncertainty that's surrounding the slowdown in China. And when you think about what's happening in China, it's not just that China's economy is slowing, it's that we don't really know how much it's slowing because their data is not what I would call 100% forthright, in that they give us the GDP number and they say that's what it was, that's what we said it was going to be. And we know from looking at data that's available from the private sector in China that things have slowed more than that. Their survey of the manufacturing conditions, rail car loading, steel production, they've all declined in an absolute sense. So we know that China's economy has slowed more than it has, but we don't know how much. We don't know how much is deliberate. They say they're trying to reposition their economy away from export-oriented, low-wage manufacturing more towards services. And some of that's actually happening. So that's the first bit of uncertainty. Then we don't know how much that uncertainty matters to the rest of the world, but we have seen that emerging economies all over the world have slowed, particularly commodity-producing countries that exported a lot of commodities to China, Brazil being one in our hemisphere that has slowed in a very significant way, but Canada being another. And Canada is one of our largest trading partners and a big source of foreign tourism here in the U.S. So we know that it's having some impact. And then lastly, we don't know what the impact is on the U.S. When China announced their currency devaluation back in August, it was right before the Fed was holding their meeting in Jackson Hole, their annual meeting in Jackson Hole, and they brought in a lot of experts to try to determine how important China's slowdown was to the U.S. That actually scared me a little bit because I thought, well, I would have thought they would have thought of that beforehand. But they were looking, and the official line that came out of there is it doesn't matter that much because our exports to China are just 0.6% of our GDP, less than 1/10 of, 0.6 percentage points of our GDP. So it's a very small proportion of our GDP. And that is very true. But one of the things that we learned in the financial crisis is that the direct links from some sort of dislocation in the global economy or the U.S. economy are never the whole story. It's the indirect links that tend to be more confounding and more meaningful for the economy. And I think the indirect links from China's slowdown have been far greater. And those indirect links have been a dramatic appreciation in the value of the dollar, which has slowed our exports and slowed exports of high-tech goods, which has weighed on high-tech manufacturing in California. That's been one. Another has been that we've seen that credit spreads have widened. We've seen that commodity prices have weakened, and the stock market has sold off. Now, collectively, those four pieces of contagion are much more important than the exports. But the exports, the minimization that was put on exports to China, I thought was very misplaced as well. Because while China accounts for just 0.6% of U.S. exports, they accounted for 70% of the growth in U.S. exports from 2010 to 2015. So it is not just how much we export to them. We exported very little to them back in 2009. We export quite a bit to them now. So I don't mean to raise more alarm than is necessary, but that is the key variable that has shifted in the global outlook and in the U.S. outlook. And I think it's probably no more than a speed bump for us. We looked at it, and it probably means about we'll cut about a half a percentage point off of U.S. economic growth this year. So instead of growing 2.5%, or actually 2.3, we have the economy growing 1.8. And that is among the lower forecasts for the U.S. if you were to look at the blue chip economic forecast. But it's really a mathematical exercise, and that we know that we grew at just a 1% annual rate in the fourth quarter, and we would have to grow at better than a 2.5% rate every quarter in order to get growth above 2% for the year. So it's really just a mathematical exercise. The second bit of uncertainty is monetary policy. And the Federal Reserve made no secret that they would like to raise interest rates. They would like to normalize interest rates. That's kind of, everything's got a different word for it right now. Normalize sounds so much better than raise. They would like to normalize interest rates. And such a move is overdue. The unemployment rate's at 4.9%. The federal funds rate is at 0.3%. I mean, it's just 1/4 point above the zero bound that we were at since the Great Recession. And those two are inconsistent. And the Fed would like to have the federal funds rate somewhere closer to 2%, which is what their long-run inflation target is. That would be a neutral federal funds rate, at least by long-term standards. The problem is getting there, and that the rest of the world, rest of the developed world, much of Europe and Japan, have taken their official rates into negative territory. And so just the knowledge that the U.S. is closer to raising interest rates means that the dollar is strengthening further. And so if the Fed was to raise rates again, or if they were even to make it known that they were likely to raise rates again, the dollar would take off, and that would put more pressure on our manufacturing sector. We do think the Fed is going to raise rates. We think they're going to, in our forecast, we actually have them raising rates 3 times in 2016. They meet again in a couple of weeks. We don't think they're going to raise rates in March. At the start of the year, the consensus forecast was that they would raise rates 4 times, once in March, once in June, once in September, and once in December. We never had that March rate hike in there. We had figured that after the first rate hike, it would take some time for the economy to adjust, and it has. But I do think that by the middle of this year, even with all the uncertainty in the global economy, things will have settled enough that the Fed will have the green light to go ahead and raise rates again. And I think the economy can withstand that. In fact, by waiting until June, mortgage rates will remain lower for longer. It's not going to flip the light switch on for the housing market, but it will allow for the housing market to strengthen a little bit more. In terms of inflation, the slowdown in China has weighed on commodity prices. We've seen the prices of all key commodities, whether they're metals, energy, or ag products. They have all come down substantially. And here in California, China's been a big growth market, particularly for almonds, walnuts, but for virtually all our ag commodities. And we've seen that prices have come off a little bit as growth has slowed there. But with the global economy slowing, inflation is likely to remain lower for longer. Oil prices have not bottomed yet. I know that they've stabilized a little bit and we've come up to $33 a barrel. They have not bottomed yet. Lower oil prices are a good thing for the U.S. economy. Over the long run, they're a good thing. So far, lower oil prices have been a drag on U.S. economic growth. From 2009 to 2014, really the middle of 2014, investment in the energy sector, in oil, natural gas, and to some extent coal, accounted for about 32% of GDP growth. And that growth was largely concentrated in 4 states: Texas, Oklahoma, North Dakota, and Colorado. They accounted for a little over 30% of our GDP growth. Houston, by itself, accounted for 17% of U.S. GDP growth. It's a bigger boom than they've ever seen in Houston. And so they've got a little bit of a comeback there. Well, in past cycles, particularly when oil has been oversupplied, as it is now. There was an article in yesterday's Wall Street Journal about how rail cars are now looked at as storage, not just for transporting crude, but just as storage, because we don't have enough need for it, and they're running out of places to store it. That rail cars are looked at as a place to store it. Well, this highlights the change in the oil market. When oil prices began to come down, a lot of people thought that it was because the Saudis had opened up the spigots and were trying to run the shale producers out of business. That's the story. It's been repeated. It's still repeated today. That's not what happened. Oil production in the U.S. essentially doubled from 2009 to 2014. If the Saudis were oversupplying crude, they wouldn't be putting it in rail cars. They would be putting it in old super tankers and parking them somewhere on the water. Instead, it's us that is overproducing. So it's real simple. You will know that oil prices have bottomed out when you see a big increase in bankruptcies among these smaller and mid-sized oil companies. You see the larger oil companies announce big cuts in their dividends because they're going to need their cash so that they can buy up a lot of these mid-sized companies, and you see a lot of M&A activity. Chevron bought Texaco, and Exxon bought Mobil, and BP bought Amoco and Arco when oil was around $9 a barrel. That marks the low. So when you see that M&A activity, that means that prices have bottomed. Up until then, lower energy prices are going to be, until prices bottom, which I think is still months and months away, lower energy prices are going to be a positive on the U.S., or will gradually become a greater positive for the U.S. because it puts more money in our pockets. It doesn't put it in all at once, it puts it in gradually, a little bit each week.
What's different today about the energy business than in those previous cycles is that we have more of the physical product. Our proven reserves of oil have more than doubled. The proven reserves of natural gas are up by a multiple, which means that there's more investment in pipelines, refineries, export facilities, 15% of all U.S. capital spending last year was in petrochemical plants along the Gulf Coast. So it's not as, so there's some longer term positives. In the short run, it's been a drag on growth because we've lost that investment in the exploration and production side, but longer term, it's going to be a positive. Fiscal policy, very rare that we can say good things about fiscal policy, but we did get a budget deal last year, and we saw that sequestration was relaxed, which is real important for communities like San Diego, which have a big military presence and get a lot of defense dollars. This year, defense and non-defense discretionary spending both increased by about $40 billion. It's not much, but it's the biggest increase in federal government spending we've seen since 2009. So government spending is less of a drag on the economy than it's been. Actually, it's a slight positive for this year. State and local finances are also in much better shape. So we're seeing more capital expenditures by state and local governments, a little bit more hiring, and also larger pay increases for employees. That's been a positive, and that's going to be a positive for the year. Lastly, the global economy. I've been telling people, it's just, I used to just say, just in short, it's a mess. It's likely to remain a mess. It's hard to avoid politics in this day and age. But the one thing I would say about politics is that you think that Donald Trump is just an American phenomenon. It's not. This whole thing it reflects trends that are going on globally. The struggles that the U.S. is having on the immigration front are happening in Europe as well. And this whole backlash about the Brexit, whether the U.K. is going to leave the EU, it's really along the same lines as that debate. The cast of characters have different names, but this is an issue that's pretty much worldwide. I think that's negative. That's a negative for long-term economic growth. I think for global economic growth this year. And I also, the other thing I would say is that the move to negative interest rates I'm an economist, I'm an economic historian. I think that, I'm very interested in this whole thing. I think it's a historical blunder that 50 years from now, people are going to look and say, how could anybody have been this stupid? And it is just so wrong that they've pushed rates to negative territory. I'll give you one quick example there. Sweden has 3% economic growth, very low unemployment, particularly by European standards. But they've adopted negative interest rates. The reason they've adopted negative interest rates is they're not a member of, they have their own currency. And so since the rest of Europe, the Eurozone, adopted negative interest rates, the krona started to appreciate, and they were worried that it would appreciate and slow their economy, so they cut interest rates to keep their currency from appreciating. This is like a drug addict using more and more drugs to try to get the same high that they got previously. That's about the best I can say for a policy that we're going to cut interest rates to keep our currency from appreciating. An appreciation in currency that appreciates because your economy is growing faster and your economy is better is not something that you should fight. Capital will always seek its highest risk-adjusted rate of return. And if you try to stop it, it'll only work for momentarily. You will not be able to stop it. It'll find a way around it. The pictures all look pretty positive. We would say that the chances of recession this year are no greater than 30%. I think our model actually comes out with 25.7. That's the highest that we've seen since the Great Recession, but that still means that 75% probability that we grow. I also think the greatest risk of recession was early this year, and the data that we're seeing coming out for February looks pretty positive. So I really think that we will shake off the effects of the global economic slowdown, shake off the effects of the inventory overbuilding by spring, and we will see that growth, even though we've got 1.8% for the year, will average about 2.5% for the second, third, and fourth quarters in 2017. When you look at domestic demand in the U.S., so one of the phrases that I referred to in our annual outlook was the further you get away from the global economy, the better the economy looks. And if you look at just domestic demand, consumer spending, and business investment, and state and local government spending, then final demand's growing around a 3% annual rate in the U.S. It's pretty solid. And so as we get past those temporary factors, that's where growth is. That's where we see growth moving back up to, and we feel pretty confident about that. I'd mentioned that oil prices haven't bottomed yet. This gives you an idea of how much they've fallen. The rig count has come down pretty substantially. California is a big oil producer, but it's such a colossal economy that it barely registers in here. And unless you're in Bakersfield, you probably haven't noticed the pullback in energy. And even then, it would depend on where you were in Bakersfield. But I know that folks who follow energy say, oh, prices are going to adjust. We're going to see the shale producers throw back production. Supply and demand are going to move into balance this year. It's the same thing they said next year. I don't think prices are going to rebound on a sustained basis until we go through whatever recession, whenever that next recession comes. And it will come. I mean, recessions, they're inevitable. And I would say that from a business standpoint, and we're 6.5 or almost 7 years past the last recession. Typically, you go only 5. And there's a saying, I think Janet Yellen said it, expansions don't die from old age. And I said, well, really nothing dies from old age. It's something that happens to you in old age. It's not, and as you get further out, you have to be more cautious. You have to watch your cholesterol. You have to watch your blood pressure. If you slip and fall, it can be more hazardous to your long-term health. I think that's the same thing with the economy. And it's one of the reasons why I think the Fed, what worries me is that they kept interest rates down too low for too long. They provided too much liquidity to the economy, and they probably created some bubbles. I liken it to someone who's been drinking a little bit too much into their middle age years. It's, when you're young, you can go out and drink with the analyst and bounce back the next day. When you get to be 40 or 50, you try that and you're calling in sick. I mean, that's it's the same thing with the economy. It is the exact same thing with the economy. And so I think that ignoring the fact that we're 7 years into the expansion is hazardous. The risk have increased. The risk from a policy mistake have clearly increased. And so, no expansion lasts forever. There is a tendency for the U.S. economy to fall into recession during the first year of a new president. Either we're in recession or we have one. And it doesn't matter whether they're Democrat or Republican. I mean, Obama had a recession. Bush was in 2001. The economy went into recession in March, 2 months after he came into office. Clinton was somewhat fortunate in that the recession actually ended in March of '91, but nobody knew about it before he came into office. So it's, and Bush Sr. didn't have a recession, but Reagan did, Carter did, Nixon did, Kennedy did, Eisenhower did. So it's typical that you have a recession very early on. So that's just something to think about as we go into 17. Looking at the performance of manufacturing versus non-manufacturing there on your left-hand side, the ISM Manufacturing Index, it came out yesterday. It rose a little bit. It's at 49.5. It's been below 50 for the last 5 months. Typically, when the ISM falls below 50, the Fed is cutting interest rates. This time they're raising them, which raises some perplexing questions in my mind. There are a lot of people that looked at this analysis and they said, well, typically it's not true. When the ISM falls below 50, the economy doesn't go into recession every time. It falls into recession 50% of the time. But what's most troubling to me about this analysis, and I don't think we're in recession, is that when the ISM falls below 50, 5 years or more out into a business expansion, we've gone into recession every single time that's happened. So it doesn't have the precedent is not very comforting. The one thing that does give me comfort is that if that were to have happened, it would have happened 5 months ago, and it hasn't. The economy saw that growth in the fourth quarter of last year was upgraded last week. Growth in the first quarter looks like it's going to be 1.5% to 2%. So I think the slowdown in manufacturing this time has just merely led to a slower period of economic growth. And the reason that I think that's happened is that if you look at the four areas of the economy that have slowed, manufacturing, mining, oil production, and agriculture, they collectively account for 30% of our GDP, but just 12% of employment. So the impact on GDP, which is a nice kind of number, it's the total value of all final goods and services produced in the economy, but you can't spend it, you don't put it in your gas tank, you don't eat it. It's kind of a hard number to conceptualize on an individual basis, whereas employment is something that we all understand. And GDP has slowed, employment really has not. The employment numbers in the last half of last year were the best that we'd seen since the 1990s. Looking around at what's happened in the country, most areas of the country have been growing fairly rapidly. San Diego is right here at about the middle of the pack among of this set of cities, but U.S. growth is about 2%, so we're growing faster than the nation. We did see growth slow in the second half of last year, and I'm trying to be cautious, but only to strike the right degree of caution. In that I was in the Bay Area a few weeks ago, and I mentioned that I travel all over the country. I get to the Bay Area, 7, 8 times a year, and I said, and it's good that that I'm not there all the time, because I can notice the changes, the subtle changes, more easily than someone that's there day to day. And in my view, the economic tide, is beginning to go out. And if you've been at the beach and it's high tide, and it's 20 minutes past high tide, and you've been out there for an hour or so, you're not really going to know the difference. And I think that's where we are right now. In the Bay Area, they've had job growth of 4% a year for the last 3 years. This year, we think it's going to be 2.6%. So there's no reason to leave the beach. I mean, everybody's still going to have a pretty good time in 2016. I think the same's true here in San Diego. I mean, the numbers are a little bit different, but we're still going to have pretty strong job growth. We're still going to add jobs faster than the rest of the country, but we're not going to add jobs at the same pace that we did in the last 3 years. And I think one of the big reasons for that is capital's become a little dearer. It's a little tougher to raise private equity. It's a little tougher to raise money, and that's going to curb some of the more speculative activity. Apartment construction also shows some signs of topping out from what we'd seen. There's plenty of projects underway, but the inflow of new projects is not as great as it's been in years past. In terms of housing, overall housing, that's what we see nationally as well. This year, we're looking for about a 9% increase in single-family construction, no net increase, or maybe it's about a 3% increase in multifamily. It's not in apartments, though. It's mostly in townhomes and condominiums. In terms of California's economy, the last 3 years have been spectacular. You see a modest deceleration. We've added jobs in virtually every industry except manufacturing. And I can tell you a good part of the slowdown in manufacturing that we saw has been in tech hardware. We've seen some cutbacks here. If you look around the state, every area of California, all areas of California are adding jobs at a pretty solid pace. San Jose is the real standout. It's real interesting. As of December, the San Jose, Santa Clara County, for the most part, still has 1,500 fewer people working today than they did in December of 2001. So they're just shy of recovering all of the jobs lost when the tech bubble burst. That is subject to change on Friday when they're going to revise the numbers going back to March of 2015. So we may see that changes. The other thing that stands out, look at where the Inland Empire is right now. It's one of the leaders in job growth. And while international trade is slowed, it's slowed on the export side. The Inland Empire is where we consolidate a lot of stuff on the import side, and it's been much stronger over the last year. So let me stop there. I'll be around afterward to take any questions. Thank you very much.